Ladies and gentlemen, a new snapshot for Minecraft Java Edition 1.17, the Caves and Cliffs update part 1 is out. Here's 21w15a. If you don't know what that part 1 thing is about, then check out my main gameplay updates video that'll explain exactly what that piece of news is about. In this video, we're going to focus on the technical changes in 21w15a, and they are quite many. There is a new marker entity that can be used by data packs and for custom maps. There's a new debug function for creating traces to find out where your functions are going wrong, as well as new options for separators for text components, a new server prompt, and a slew of fixes to custom world generation. My name is Slicetime, I'm here to guide you through all of those changes and every little detail. Let's dive right in and start with entities and data, and that means we're talking about a new entity, that is the marker entity. Marker entities are a new type of entities strictly meant for custom use cases like mapmaking and data packs. They only exist on the server side and are never sent to clients at all. Clients will never know about the existence of any markers and they never cause any network traffic. They are also good for performance in that they do not do any updates of their own. Their tick is empty, if you will. They can also store any data that you want. Their entity data has a data compound field, and that compound can contain anything you want. It is simply stored the way that you set it. For most use cases where area effect clouds are currently used, or even marker armor stands, marker entities will be better and more performant. There are some exceptions, of course. Since they are never sent to clients, they can't be used to display any type of text or graphical elements, other than, for instance, summoning particles at their location. They also cannot be vehicles. If anything tries to ride a marker, it will be immediately dismounted, simply because clients don't know about them and as such could not track what is going on with the rider. Let's move on to commands and talk about a new command called debug function. This has exactly the same syntax as the function command, but of course prefixed with debug. What it does is write a file with a trace of every executed command, message, result, or error, even if those messages would normally be invisible. Inside of that file, you'll find a hierarchy of lines with the lines prefixed with what they are. C for a command, R for a result, M for a message, and so on. A change to text components too. Text components that evaluate lists of things, like names with the selector component, or NBT fields with the NBT components, can now override the separator. Separator is a comma and a space by default, but if you specify a separator element, you can now specify what gets put in between the elements. This can be any type of component in itself, including an empty string. Let's talk about server functionality. Earlier in the Snapshot series, servers got an option to require that resource packs are used, prompting players to enable the pack or disconnect. This now has an additional field in the server.properties called resource pack prompt. That is a text component, can contain multiple lines, and is a message that is shown to players when this screen shows up. This gives the server a chance to explain why the resource pack is important. Finally, let's get into world generation. As the default worlds have been switched back to the older style of generation, a whole slew of changes have happened to the vanilla world definitions. This includes switching the vanilla world height back to being between 0 and 256, but also things like switching off aquifers and noise caves. However, one thing to note is that all of the configured features and carvers for the second part of the Caves and Cliffs update are still available in the game. They've all been renamed with a prototype underscore prefix and can be referenced from a data pack. One specific case of this is the provided data pack that you can get from the announcement post of the snapshot. This data pack switches world generation to the newer style of world generation, and what it does internally is simply replace all the features and carvers in the biome definitions to the prototype versions. It also, of course, switches world heights and cave settings. Some other things to note in this change is that the underwater cave and canyon carvers have been added back, and that the lava level has been moved back to 11 above the bottom of the world from 9 above the bottom of the world in the previous snapshot. However, there have also been a number of format changes to the data definition formats for custom worlds. Let's start with geodes, where the outer wall distance, the point offsets, and the distribution point are now all int providers instead of separate min and max fields. Speaking of int providers, there's now a clamped int provider that takes an int provider input and clamps its output values. For an example of how this is used in the flower forest vegetation count decorator. Together with this, negative values for counts are no longer supported and will cause a parse error. The glowstone decorator has also been removed. Glowstone is now placed with a count decorator using a biased to bottom int provider to provide the count. Height providers have also changed. There's now new types, a trapezoid version, a biased to bottom version, and a very biased to bottom version. This is now used in range decorators that use height providers instead of having their own vertical anchors. This means that many of them have been able to be removed. This includes the depth average, biased, and very biased range decorators that have all been removed and instead are being used with the trapezoid, biased, and very biased height providers instead. Notably, the definitions of data for the trapezoid height providers is different from the old definition of depth average decorators. You now specify a minimum and a maximum limit rather than a center point and a range. Finally, I'll mention some stability fixes. A bunch of the stability fixes in this version relate to the world definition files. That includes better parsing and better limits, so if you have invalid data that could crash the game before, you will now get parse errors for such data instead. And that was all for this time. I hope you found this update video useful. If you did, please help me out in return, leave a like, drop a comment, or share the video. Every interaction you make with this video will help the channel along, and we are so close to 50,000 subs, so I really do appreciate it. Of course, if you're interested in this type of update, then please subscribe to the channel. I make both gameplay and technical update videos for every single snapshot, pre-release, release candidate, and full release. And of course, if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified by YouTube when the videos are out. With that said, thank you for watching. My name is Sliced Slime, and I'll see you next time.